Hello and welcome to Learn in Public. I'm Doug.
And I'm Erik.
And on this show, Erik and I support each other on each of our journeys as online creators and as online business builders, as we share what we're thinking about, what we're working on, the questions that we have, and in the hope that our conversation also might support you on your creative journey and perhaps also journey making your own online business that's based off of your own creative work and that kind of fits well with your lifestyle. This is episode 5 of the show. Thanks for following along, whether this is your first time listening or you've been here since the beginning, which the beginning really wasn't all that long ago. Um, I'm in the hot seat this week, so I'm going to throw it to Erik first, so that he can share a bit of an update on how the last week has gone.
Sure, yeah. One thing I was just thinking when you were saying kind of about what we were doing and what the podcast is about is that I don't know if we've actually talked about the one of the basics of having a check-in like this with
Mm,
someone that you whose opinion you value. They don't even necessarily need to be in the exact same space as you, but um, we have our weekly check-ins, which are great, and then I have a couple other friends that I usually do at least one weekly check-in with, sort of along these lines, and I think it's so valuable. And if any of our listeners, watchers, viewers do that, I'd love to hear kind of what works for them and if they have any ideas about making these things better for them. I know that this has been just, especially being a solo creator, it's been incredibly valuable. And I love doing it this way where we get to share it with other people.
ditto.
My week has been really about integrating all the life changes that I'm going through with the work changes that I'm going through. It seems to be a time
Mm,
of so much change. And I felt like I had kind of made a decision about the podcast and taking the meditations out and breaking them off into something else. Then I mentioned that last week in an intro and said, hey, give me your feedback on that. And all I've gotten is emails saying, oh my God, please don't. Don't do that.
don't change.
Don't
Don't
change.
change. We don't like change.
Right. And I
Mm,
feel, like that tugs at my heartstrings a little. I feel like I have
hmm
to respect that and, realize, okay, but I also think, God, I'm just one person. How am I going to be able to provide all this stuff? And will the podcast be able to grow in that configuration? So, it's kind of, it's a lot of what ifs, right? And there's
hmm
no way, I don't have a marketing team or somebody to go, let's do a market survey and we'll get back on this. I just can ask in the beginning of the podcast, hey, what do you guys think? And of course, I'm only probably going to hear from the people who are like, please don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a lot of stuff like that. Like I thought I knew one thing, and then I was like, oh, maybe I don't. But I am also looking into this week licensing some of the
Mm,
meditations I've already done,
interesting.
which another friend of mine has done that and was giving me some resources on that. So that seems good, except for I'm running into other strange licensing issues. For example, there are all these things like ArtGrid and Epidemic that let you license sounds for podcasts and YouTube videos. And I use one of those for the podcast. But those same licenses do not extend to an app, for instance. So what costs $30 a month to license unlimited tracks for a podcast is like $3,000 for one track in an app.
And what do
So
you mean now in an app? Like to,
like say there was a company XYZ that had an
mm,
app that had sleep meditations in it, and
gotcha.
they licensed those meditations from people like me. they would also need to know that the music was covered if there was music in it. So the licensing would cover the use of the music on that service in that format.
Mm,
But, I mean, for example, right, if I put that music in a TikTok video, it's in an app, but
right.
totally different than if I
Yeah.
put that music in a meditation that then is part of an app.
Right. It's an
I,
interesting, it's like a kind of weird layering of licenses too, as you like,
well,
because you're
right.
licensing the music and then you want to license your meditations, which
Yeah.
have music in them.
So what I'm looking at doing right now, because of the just prohibitive expense of it, is either hiring someone, like on Fiverr. You can get people who make meditation tracks pretty
Mm,
inexpensively. I might just do it myself in GarageBand with the autoplay
yeah.
and some synth
Hey, why
pads.
not?
I
Yeah.
mean, then I'd know I'd have the rights to it because I made it.
Hmm.
So it's kind of fun in that it's helping me think about some different ways around the challenge. But I'm glad I realized it before I went out and thought, oh, I have the rights to these because I pay for the subscription. And they're like, yeah, no, you don't. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's
Well,
this week's licensing warning and
yep. Good for
business
folks to know.
update.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, well, I totally get that anytime you like start to might change something about what's been consistent for a long period of time. Um, I guess to some degree, I'm not surprised that there's this "don't change" message or vocality, but I also think it's important to not let that keep you from experimenting and like
Right.
still maybe going down that path and figuring out what feels good to you. Um, and yeah, find a place that's maybe the best of both worlds where you're excited about what you're making and the people are still enjoying it. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, at the very least, they're going to have 40 or 50 meditations they can cycle through, even if I don't make another one past January.
Mm,
So, you know, we'll see.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well,
How about you? What's going
we'll keep
on?
up with you on that. So I think today for my time in the hot seat, I'd share kind of just a general update of like what I've been working on and what I've been thinking about. There is a little bit of like an opportunity to maybe make some changes or to potentially emphasize certain things that are going on inside of Mighty Networks, like the service that I offer, the educational product, this course and community platform, because of some updates that Mighty Networks is making to their platform. Anytime there's a new feature or significant update there, that's I kind of see that as an opportunity for me to potentially revamp or reevaluate what's going on inside of that community and see if there's something that we might want to change, like an experiment to take on in conjunction with whatever's going on with the platform.
Hmm.
Um,
You're talking
so it might
about
work.
spaces, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Did you
Um,
check out that live stream with
I
Gina?
did.
Yeah, I
I should
did
have
too.
taken a photo of this, but I sketch noted it.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so I might bring that in a few minutes here.
Awesome.
Um, but kind of as a segue into that, maybe, and to reference back some of the past conversations that we've had in terms of what I've been working on and thinking about. Just today, I put out a video on how to draw star people, like what
Nice.
you're seeing on the screen if you're watching this right now. Just the way that I've enjoyed drawing people lately, as opposed to kind of stick figures. Stick figures are great too, a good starting point. But what I enjoyed, or some interesting things about this video, I recorded it just yesterday, published it today, and part of this is my attempt to get better at kind of zero edit videos where I'm recording in real time, I'm drawing in real time, talking while I'm drawing, at least a lot of the time, because I like the feel of it. And so what was interesting about this video, when I recorded it, like I did not feel good in the moment. I thought I was like, there's too much too many filler words, that there wasn't enough flow, that I was doing a bad job of like showing people this way of drawing. Yeah, I just felt bad after I recorded it. And I was like, well, I won't look at it yet. I'll let it sit. If I don't like it tomorrow, like I don't have to publish it. But then I came back this morning and I looked at it and I watched it and I was like, oh, this is actually okay. This like fits the tone that I want to set. It's, I think, helpful. Even though there's one mistake in one of the star people that I draw, I think it's
Hmm.
good to show what mistakes look like and be like, oh,
Yeah.
I did this wrong. Here's how to do it a little bit better. Um, so that was just interesting to note, like how it feels to create something, and what you think about it initially might be different when you come back with fresh eyes the next day. Um,
I
so I
think
noticed
that's
that about it.
absolutely true. And I also think that there's a real value to the people who are watching to see things that aren't so polished. You know, so many YouTubers especially really hit the edit hard, and the lighting is perfect, and everything is, and their script is perfect, and their teleprompting reading is perfect. And they're like doing a TV show.
Yeah,
And I watched
yeah,
a
a lot of it really
Procreate.
is that well produced. It's true.
Yeah, I watched a Procreate tutorial yesterday by a woman who was a watercolor artist, and I think she didn't expect this video to do anything because she was constantly going, "I don't really know what this button does, but this button does this really cool thing." And there was tons about that app she didn't know, but she taught me a lot,
Hmm.
and it was
Hmm.
so real. And so,
Yeah.
it was nice to know that, oh, okay, she's just doing this because she wants to show people an app she's excited about. And I thought that was so great. And she had 3 million views on that video.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an aspect of like learning alongside the viewer,
Hmm.
that I think, yeah, just facilitates that connection with the
Yep.
the person that you're making your thing for. Um, and with this one, it ended up being it was about 13 minutes long. Uh, as I mentioned, like the first couple of videos in this style have been closer to like 25-30 minutes, which I think is longer than I would like to have these videos be. So I'm gonna kind of try to, shoot for that 10 to 15 minute range. Feels like a good, kind of target to shoot for. Um, and I got some more videos in the works. I brainstormed. So yeah, maybe this is a good time to bring in the Mighty Networks, um, shift, because it actually led to some ideas for future videos. Um, what they're going through right now. So like the way they've described this transition, what they do. This platform is called Mighty Networks. Initially, they wanted to provide kind of an alternative to Facebook groups and like these big open, using the large social media platforms to create learning communities. They wanted to provide a different space, a more dedicated space for specific learning communities. So they talk about kind of moving from social to community. That was kind of their initial push. And that's what pulled me into their platform, because I really like how they merge, courses and community. But more recently, what the CEO, Gina Bianchini, announced in a live stream a couple days ago, maybe, that I think Eric watched as well. At least part of that
Hmm.
is the latest shift in how they think about the product that they offer, and the way some of the design and structure of it works. It's from community to what they're calling cultural software. cultural software, which is kind of an interesting term, um, that comes from this sense of, okay, yes, this is a space to create a community, but it's a place to establish a particular culture, which I think is just an interesting lens to think about as the host of a space. Like, oh, okay, yes, like I recognize that I've been, hosting a community that has a shared purpose behind it, but it triggers some different things to think about. Okay, what's the culture that you're wanting to establish here? And a culture is much more. It's less about top down. As a host or as a leader, you can kind of like establish some certain norms or kind of how we do things here, but a lot of it is more kind of like bottom up. Like what are the people doing within this space? What are they spending their time on? How are they interacting with each other? What are they working toward? And the way that connects to an update within the software itself, the tool itself, is they're adding some kind of, I guess, structural flexibility in terms of the spaces that are set up within your Mighty Network. And they even, I mean, the name for it is Spaces. This is the name of like this update that instead of kind of the main breakdown of a Mighty Network, it used to be pretty much just like there's the main, well, there's courses, there's groups, there's topics that you can set up, but kind of all of you can go into each of those individually, but then they're also available from like this main activity feed. So if you go to the activity feed, you will kind of just see, let me adjust how my highlighter is showing up here. Yeah, you will see kind of the latest things that someone is posting to the main network, to a course, to a group, to a topic. With Spaces, they're kind of just giving more flexibility with the different rooms, so to speak, that you might have set up within your network. How's this hitting you so far, Eric? Like, do you feel like that's a somewhat apt way of describing what's going on? It might be too
Yeah.
abstract if people aren't familiar with
If
Mighty
you, yeah,
Networks.
maybe
Or
if you haven't actually been exposed to Mighty Networks, it might be a little hard to follow. But I think ultimately it sounds pretty good. And I was talking, and I'm back on thinking I'm probably going to do an Awaken Your Myth Mighty Network again. After having some conversations about that with some other people who are like, oh, no, 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 that's what you need to do. And I realize in my heart, that's what I really want to do too. So I've been thinking about this as well. And I think I'm going to wait until Spaces rolls out and build it then. But I'm interested to see
yeah,
what you think the new opportunities are to take culture and integrate it more into what you're doing business wise. How does
yeah,
that fit in for you? Like what sort of ideas are rolling around in Doug's head?
yeah. That's what I have been thinking about, kind of after taking in, and that's literally one of the questions that I added to my little sketch note here is,
Hmm.
what culture do I want to create? And what's helpful about these types of shifts and imagining what I might do with the verbal to visual Mighty Network is it gets me back kind of to like first principles or like founding, like the foundations of verbal to visual, like why we're here. Yes, it's like a place to learn how to sketch note. But then why is that even valuable? Why is that important? And it's thinking about those questions that led me to kind of like what I think will be a series of videos on why sketchnoting, they what I what I think will be 3 videos. This is
Hmm.
another thing related to making videos, what I thought would be one video, and maybe what in like my previous form of making videos, I would try to cram all this into one video. Now I'm thinking, let's just make this 3 like short videos. So why sketchnoting works, why sketchnoting matters, and why sketchnoting now. And this came about fairly organically, because one of my responses to the culture, and a phrase that has always resonated in me, just this idea of making marks on the page. That there's something like that's almost the starting point, getting out of your head and making marks on the page. So for the why sketchnoting works video, it's going to be something like, here, let me try doing a little OBS magic, just to share this.
Look at that.
Why sketchnoting works is this transition from marks on a page, which leads to clarity of thought, which leads to ease of action. That's kind of how I had been thinking about why sketchnoting is a thing worth doing.
Yeah.
So one cultural piece there that I wonder if that's going to probably going to have to do a little bit of editing. Just curious, already thinking about what the final version of that will
It
look
looked
like.
good on this end. It was
Cool.
fine. The other thing you could do is include those paper things in the show notes if you want.
Oh yeah, I'll take some photos.
That'd be great.
And then hopefully some of these will be like videos on YouTube before too long as well.
Yay.
So culture, right? Like the transition of thinking about community to culture has me think about like actions and behavior. So the thing that I want to encourage, which I think is already there, but there might be a way to emphasize this, is this simple practice of like making marks on the page. With sketchnoting, and I imagine like with any field, while it can be valuable and useful to talk about sketchnoting or talk about meditation, like the best way to get better at it is to do it. So the doing of it in sketchnoting is like making marks on a page, like actually getting ideas out, even if they're sloppy, even if you're, got to go through multiple iterations of whatever it is. It's about mark making, in the same way that meditation is about meditating. So that's one of the things that came up. What matters, or why sketchnoting matters. And I think sharing each of these visuals is helpful for me too, because I'm just curious if they kind of resonate with you. And
Sure.
then after I share this one and then the next one, we'll see if this like fits in with what you think of, Eric, as far as like culture goes. The why sketchnoting matters. I've been really into this like infinity diagram. There's a concept of the infinite game from Simon Sinek. Did not originate the term of the infinite game, but he's written a book about it. And so why sketchnoting matters, I think of this as a tool to help you figure out how to be in the world. So there's this like kind of infinite cycle between, your life with your family or your friends or your coworkers, like in society, doing what you're doing. There's interactions that you're having there. You're living there in a certain way. And then I see kind of sketchnoting as a way. It's hard to do this while looking. It's kind of this processing tool. Anytime there's a lack of clarity in kind of what you should do next. I think putting marks on a page, getting those ideas out of your head can help you figure out what's going on there and help you decide how to act or what to do next. So this kind of like continuous loop between living life, doing what you're doing, having this resource that you turn to get ideas out of your head, think through them, work through them, live your life. Uh, those marks on a page can help inform your actions. So
Sure.
this feels like a kind of virtuous cycle to me. In the same way that like I feel like meditation could fit in that cycle too, in terms of
Hmm.
it being this reflection tool that
I feel like
supports.
there's a meditative aspect to sketchnoting for sure. And
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
told you when we first started talking about it, to me it's the easiest way I've found to put intuition
Mm,
into like the real world, to
yeah.
translate something. Like it almost goes for me straight from like wherever intuition comes from, which isn't really the mind, onto the page
Hmm.
without, like, it almost doesn't need the mind to get there, which I think is a huge benefit for me. There are very few things in life like art can do that, but this can do that for concepts that aren't art, that are like for actual concrete concepts.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then there's an element of what you're describing in terms of getting intuition on the page that comes to the third sketch. This one came kind of later in the process. And this is kind of the why sketchnoting now. Seeing sketchnoting as a tool to help you capture wisdom and like store it for a future day,
yeah,
store it for future use.
some
Kind of like the
wisdom
idea of
star
someone
people.
out with like a, yeah, like your little like net going out and catching
Yeah, I loved it. That's
fireflies
cool.
or whatever the thing might be, and then bottling them up for future use. So that was kind of where my mind went when I started to think about, okay, how might this shift in Mighty Networks from community to cultural software got me thinking about, okay, the kind of bigger picture purpose and reason for sketchnoting, what it's all about. Um, and then the next step that I haven't really gotten to yet is seeing if with the change in structure, or the opportunity for a change in structure, if there is something different that I could do around how the verbal to visual Mighty Networks runs.
Hmm.
And I guess what I could do next is give a quick overview of what's going on inside of the verbal to visual Mighty Network. Does that sound useful here, Eric? Or is there anything that I've shared so far that you feel like is worth
Um,
highlighting or
I think
digging
I,
deeper on?
I think that sounds good. I mean, like basically talking about what you like, how you run it now is what you're.
Yeah. How I
Yeah.
run it now is a way to see like if there maybe is anything that we could do differently as an improvement.
Well, one thing I like about this is kind of it's like what we were talking about with what I want to do with these new stories that I'm writing for the podcast. I want to
Mm.
bring mindfulness sort of like along with the story without having it be specifically about meditating or any kind of mindfulness
Mm.
practice. This has that same vibe where you can kind of take something that has a practical application. I want to take notes, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
have my notes be clear and help with, with what I'm doing, and add that aspect of it, revealing intuition, bottling wisdom. Uh, I think that's really
Mm.
great because it gives people something they didn't expect,
Mm.
which is just the best.
Yeah. I like that. I like how you described that. Um, yeah. So then to kind of get at what's going on right now within the verbal to visual Mighty Network. So there are 8 courses that are kind of available as a complete at your own pace structure, which is nice for folks who just want to kind of dig in and might be less interested in the interactive community components. Complete at your own pace.
It also gives a huge value right off the bat for joining the network. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to look around. You can just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to start here."
Yeah.
I think that's super valuable.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the first things that I point people to. There's a welcome checklist that you can build and customize for your Mighty Network. And one of the first things is to like start a course, like pick a course to start with and be working through it. So those are all there that people can tap into. But then for the live workshops, what I've been doing lately and I think would like to continue doing, I've kind of been cycling between running one of our, so the live workshops are each Wednesday. So it's a weekly workshop, a Zoom event. What I have been cycling through with those events. So one piece is doing kind of a live course, like spending, breaking up looking at the course, seeing how many units there are, and maybe giving like one Wednesday to each unit of the course,
Mm-hmm.
um, as an opportunity for accountability and kind of make it like create this sense of like a cohort of people that are working through this course together.
Yep.
Someone within Verbal to Visual recently shared kind of some crazy stats about how much more successful cohort-based courses are compared to kind of the complete at your own pace course model, if they're like exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Did
there's a lot of
he or
value in
she
having a group of people.
have any information on the other side of that? Like who, like what enrollment is like for one versus the other? Because it would seem like you could, one is evergreen. It's always available. You can start today.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
other is you need to be here at this time, and which seems like a barrier.
I think it's the opposite though. It's like if people are paying for it, then if they're paying for it and you like have to be there to make use of it, you're gonna show up and you're gonna make use of it.
Yeah,
Whereas if it's like, oh, I can do that whenever, you never
you're
get
still
to it,
paying for it.
or you do it. Oh yeah, they still pay for it.
Right.
But this is more about like what people actually. It's more about completion rates
Hmm.
than sales, I guess, is kind of
Sure.
what it comes down to.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'll find the link and share that in the show notes too,
I prefer
to
live
this particular
courses.
data.
Yeah.
But I like having a blend, right? Like there's the opportunity for people to work at their own pace, but then with these Wednesday workshops, we cycle through the different courses.
Brilliant. I think it's a
But I
great
kind of
idea.
want to. I like having a few other things besides just running through a course and then picking the next course and running through that. So my thought to build in a little bit of variety in those Wednesday workshops is a couple things. In between each live course, do a sketchnoting challenge. So this is something we've done a number of times already where I pick a podcast episode, an article somewhere, occasionally an entire book, introduce that a couple of weeks in advance if it's just a podcast, or like a couple of months in advance if it's a book. And anybody who wants to participate, we all sketchnote that same source material
Hmm.
on our own time. And then in the event, we come and everyone shares their sketch notes, talk about the ideas within that podcast or book, often related to, creativity or learning or,
Oh, that's great.
the types of topics that people in this community are generally interested in. So the ideas are usually interesting to discuss. And then we talk about kind of like sketchnoting techniques, what went
Hmm.
well, what didn't. So those sketchnoting challenges have been successful, and that feels like a nice kind of break before we hop into the next course. And then there's also we've had the tradition for a while now. The first Wednesday of every month is a monthly mastermind session, which isn't too dissimilar from what Eric and I do here. It's a space for anyone to hop on and ask a question. Basically just an open Q&A. So what my hope with that balance is that, like, with the monthly mastermind at the beginning of each month,
Hmm.
that's an opportunity for anyone, no matter what course they're working on, no matter what they're sketchnoting, like that's everyone's opportunity to come in and like ask a question or get feedback. And then the live courses, that's an opportunity for a cohort of people to work through one of our 8 courses over, um, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. And then the sketchnoting challenges in between each live course, just a little bit of breathing room and an opportunity to put your skills to use and like dig into some interesting content, interesting podcast or video or a book.
And how do you
Um,
find that works for you with all the rest of your workload doing a weekly uh, session every week? Is it a lot, or do you think it's the right amount? Or
it feels like the right amount. It was hard. The times when it's hard is when I do like custom events that I have to design every single week. Like I
right,
used to do that. Like I used to do a like custom workshop every week. And that's what felt not so sustainable. Um,
sure,
with this though, there's there's very little that I am designing because the courses already exist. So we're just kind of going through them, and opportunity for Q&A and help people along the journey. The
yeah,
sketchnoting challenge, I have to find the source material, but that doesn't take too long, and that's kind of fun. And
sure.
then with the monthly mastermind, I'm just showing up and kind of facilitating the conversations. So that's kind of what makes it feel good, in that there's not a ton of prep time
Right.
on me for each of these, and I think they're all still very valuable events for the people that show up to them. So
And
that's
of
kind of
course,
the
all
sweet
your
spot.
YouTube stuff is going into verbal to visual too, and that's new content for that. So it
Yeah,
all fits
yeah,
together
that's
very
kind of
nicely.
where like the new. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's kind of where the new instruction. That's a space for new instruction, I guess.
Also,
Um,
and marketing because it's
yep.
for people to find on YouTube, and it's free to them. And if they want more, they come and join the community. It's really good
Yeah.
funnel
Yeah.
or lead magnet.
Um, yeah, exactly. Um, that's kind of where things are at. It feels like that's generally working right now.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm not yet sure if this like I guess what we can look at, and or what I might have my eye out for as I see what the transition to the spaces looks like. And a lot of it, it's just like kind of a structural redesign. So the mining
Mhm.
network's going to look a little different, and I'm just going to have more options in terms of how I group things and organize things. So
Right.
it's possible that I can, keep the same setup for the courses and the weekly workshops, but then maybe through the spaces, um, potentially play around with where things live to maybe encourage this a little bit more, the sharing of that. Yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe not play around with my the flow that I've shared, because that flow is feeling pretty good.
Yeah, you have the opportunity now to create something new if you wanted to kind of reinforce that cultural attitude, which I think is just a nice option, you know. And the nice thing is, it sounds like you're not going to have to really make any changes. Everything should port really nicely, so you can keep doing what you're doing and then just add as you like.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and
I'm glad
also
you went through
see.
this because I've been thinking about all this stuff, myself since I decided again this week that I am going to give that a shot.
Yeah, with
And
working
I
it in.
like this philosophy works really great for me. And I would love to be doing a weekly thing
Mm,
as well. Be really great.
Yeah, what do you think? And maybe this can be our last thing for today. I do have kind of a hard exit at the
Sure.
top of the hour. So there's one
Absolutely.
question that we can maybe save for a future episode. But I would be curious to throw it to you, Eric, to share what what you think in Awaken Your Myth, if there's anything, what that structure might look like for an Awaken Your Myth community.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I I may start it with or without a course. I haven't decided exactly yet.
mhm.
Um, it may just be it starts with the you know a short some video overviews of the pillars, basically, kind of talking
Mm,
about what they mean and how to implement them. And what I've been actually doing lately is getting on Instagram and TikTok live and
mm,
chatting with 50, 100 people about what
that's
are
cool.
your issues, how do you want
Yeah.
to, like, if this were something you were to use to deal with issues in your own life and realizing your own dreams, what would you want to know? What questions do you have? And so I'll sort of explain, to people while they're there, and they'll say, "Well, what about this? How does it, how do you get out of a toxic relationship using this?" And I'll kind of like
Mm,
break it down like that. And then I've been sending people to sign up to the ConvertKit page for the newsletter, so
nice.
that I have some. And I got, I think, 12 people yesterday actually signed up for the newsletter, doing a half hour
From that
live,
live stream, huh?
on
That's
TikTok.
cool.
Because I get right out there and tell them, I'm like, hey, do me a favor. If you're interested in this at all, go sign up for the newsletter. And I'm thinking, I could do that every day. I love to do that, sit out on the back porch and just chat.
Hmm.
So I think that
That's a great
that,
way to that's a great way to uncover like what questions people have, what topics they want to learn more about. Like
yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah. They love being asked.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a sense of kind of what they need.
Yeah.
So I would say that's really what I would like to do. I would
Hmm.
like to do, ideally, I would have a course, the Awaken Your Myth self paced course. And that might be
Yeah.
something pretty basic. I'm talking about I think I'm going to do a 90-minute, basically webinar type course for free before I launch this.
Mm.
And then I'd love to get cohorts together of people who really want to go deep and do like a month on each pillar. Like, so do a 5-month course where we really dive in, go, okay, mindfulness. What does it mean to me? How can I make it work in this bigger picture? What parts are challenging for me? What parts are already in place? And then letting people work together to support each other, and me being the ringleader and keeping everything on track, I think could be really valuable and a great way to add, because it's a it isn't a hard and fast set of prescriptive actions. It's
Hmm.
really developing attitudes, and it's something that I've been doing this literally my whole life since I was 19, and I'm still learning about it.
Hmm.
So I want to foster that way of looking at it, and I think that something close to what you're doing would be absolutely the way to do it. And I think there are just a lot of people who want that right now. They want more peace of mind. They want a
Hmm.
life that's more fulfilling. They want to understand, how do I create that in the face of what's happening in the world? I
Hmm.
get that a lot. How do I live my dreams with, like,
Mm.
ugh, look at
Yeah.
this, you know? So yeah, I think you're an inspiration to me, Doug.
Oh, well, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what you're talking about here, and I like um, the structure and the community support that would come from it. Yeah, I see it. I
Yeah.
see it
So we'll
working.
see. We'll see.
Cool.
Right now, the thing I got to do is take all the steps to get there, and
Mm-hmm.
this month I'm doing a trade that I was talking about last week for some advertising on the podcast for some help with sort of planning all this out from somebody who's built many mighty networks before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Specifically Mighty Networks too, not just
Specifically mighty
other.
networks. Yeah.
That's awesome.
For people in my space. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
man, that sounds super valuable.
yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
And his
Yeah.
excitement about it was part of what, like, I laid it all out for him this week, and he's like, "Oh, this is your future. This is what you're going to do," you know. And he's done this for many other people, so I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah.
Because I was nervous about it, and I didn't really have, you know, like I couldn't bring the excitement I have in my heart to like the business vision. He's like, "We'll get that covered." So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's amazing. Well, and what I feel like how this can fit really nicely with where you're at is that we've talked about this before, I think, the kind of content versus community dynamic where, you know, a podcast is all about you creating this fairly polished thing like once a week, twice a week, whatever the cadence of it is. Whereas a community there are some things that you as the host need to create, but so much of the value comes from just creating that space where people can interact with each other, learn from each other. You provide these kind of foundational pieces, but a lot of the value comes, it's not going to come from you. It's going to come from the conversations that they have with each other. And that's like a relieving thing. It like takes off some of the pressure around all of it is about the content you put out and how well that performs.
it's
It's
kind of
much
like
more about the community, and you
the
get to
podcast
tap
is
into
like
that
building a
community energy.
fire every week. You know, it's like building a new fire every week and it goes out, and then you got to build another one. And this feels more like lighting a fire that you just tend. You know, that
Yeah.
it keeps growing and it keeps, you know, it's more like an eternal flame than
Yeah.
just a weekly campfire.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I cut you off when what you were finishing.
No.
I mean to.
No, I think I like what you brought in there. It's more like, it's kind of like the Olympic torch.
Yeah, a little
Like much
bit,
more
right?
of
You know,
a,
like it just
what does that
you
look
can
like?
start that fire in a group of people, and then you know you really it's like it kind of takes off on its own,
Yeah.
and I can just add my own particular fuel to it.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I like about that analogy too is, you know, it's not, there are, you know, however much energy you spend within that space in a given day or a given week, like, you know, you are adding fuel to that fire within that community. But when you step away, other people that are part of it can still be there, can
Hmm.
still engage with other people. They're contributing to the fire as well while
Hmm.
you're away. And I think that's what makes it more of this eternal flame, because uh, they're just more people contributing to the fire. It's like distributed effort in fire building and
And that's a
fire
real
maintenance.
gift
So,
to give
yeah.
people that opportunity to do that, because it's
Mm-hmm.
very satisfying, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I see we're coming up against your hard exit, so
Yeah.
we should probably wrap this puppy up.
I think that's a great way to end that. I really like that metaphor that you brought in. The getting a fire going and keeping it going for folks and allowing them to support that as well. Um, Great
Cool.
thought. So good luck, listeners and viewers, with whatever fires you are starting, and don't be afraid to find ways to bring other people along so that you're not tending that fire all on your own. Um, makes the journey more fun, as I think this conversation is partly about too, having each
Agreed.
other to share a journey with.
Agreed.
Makes it pretty awesome.
Well,
Well,
I'm looking
Eric, thanks for
forward
chatting
to
this week.
yeah, I'm looking forward to next week already. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care, Doug.
Thanks. Bye, Eric. And bye, viewers and listeners.